I'm going to call the April 17, 2024 Williamsburg Planning Commission meeting to order. Heather, would you call the roll for us, please?
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Mr. Tarley?
Here.
Mr. Boswell?
Here.
Mr. Granger?
Here.
Ms. Liebel?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here. Thank you. We have on our first agenda item that we have that we need some action on is the approval of minutes from our March 2024 meeting. Are there any changes that anybody would like to add at this time? Okay, is there a motion to approve the March 2024 minutes as submitted?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye. Okay, thank you. That brings us to our public hearings. We have for the first, I guess the first set, I would say, PCR 23-003, 003A, and 004. Ms. Griffin, it's yours.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, Chairman Boswell and members of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission considered these three requests at your December 23rd, 2023 meeting, and after that, the City Council held a public hearing to consider these items at their March 14th, 2024 meeting. There were some changes made to the application since the Planning Commission heard this back in December, and while the City Council did hold a public hearing, they did recommend this item be placed back into the Planning Commission's hand for review to just review the four items that were changed. And so I'll go over those very quickly, and then we'll get right into the presentation. The property owner has allowed Crescent Acquisitions, LLC, represented by Gregory R. Davis, Esquire, to request these three zoning changes. First is a zoning text amendment, the PCR 23003. It would add an additional zoning district, the ED3 district, to the city. The next is PCR 23003A. It's actually the rezoning of the property from ED2 to ED3. The two properties are 1430 High Street, Unit 6 and Unit 12. And then the third request is PCR 23-004, a special use permit to actually allow apartments to be able to be built on the two properties. The changes that were made since the first Planning Commission meeting was the number of proposed units has been reduced. At your meeting, it was requested 199 units. That's now been reduced to 189. Instead of a deficit of 40 spaces for parking, there is now an increase in parking spaces, and I'll explain that a little bit later. This means that there's no longer required a special use permit. If you remember in your December meeting, there was a special use permit to waive parking requirements. That is no longer needed at this time. And the fourth is the initial density of 105 units per acre was reduced, and I'll also explain that later on in the presentation. A quick background, this was known as a Roselawn property. Back in 2005, it was rezoned from ED to ED2. It's approximately 55 acres. The net acreage here is around 49 acres. I'll first go through the request for the zoning text amendment. Right now, the ED2 district allows for mixed use with no more than 40% of the gross area being dedicated to residential uses. This request is to increase the percentage of residential uses in this mixed use area from 40% to 43%, and it's also requesting a waiver of the dwelling unit districts, which requires 12 units per acre, and they're asking for 16 units per acre, and I'll get into that also. I thought we'll start with the purpose of the ED3 zoning district. Some people have asked about spot zoning. Staff does not feel that this is spot zoning. This is already a mixed-use development, and in this mixed-use development, you have offices, you have commercial uses, you have retail, and you also have residential uses. So we do not feel that this is mixed use, but I also want to explain the ED2. When the applicant first came to the city, they wanted to amend the ED2 district. And staff did not feel like that was the best idea because there are other properties in the city that are ED2, and this would then open a pathway to increase density with a special use permit in those ED2 areas. Instead, we thought it was better to actually add an ED3 district. It allows the applicant to provide voluntary proffer conditions if they so desire. The state code does not allow proffer conditions if there is not a rezoning associated with the request. I then want to talk about density. If you remember, when they first appeared before you, there was a calculation of 1.97 acres. There was, and excuse me, that should be not 299, that should be 199 units that they requested. And at the 199 units, there were 101 units per acre. That was the acreage, and that just included unit 6 that you see there, parcel A, and then parcel B, unit 12. Combined, that's 1.97 acres. They were requesting 199 units, and that equates to 101 units per acre. Crescent Communities is now proposing that they will have reserved parking. If you remember, when they first came, there was no reserved parking. There was a shared parking methodology that they were using, and that meant that people could park anywhere, and the idea was that there would be peak hours that residents will be there, and then peak hours that commercial people would be there, and they would not need to have the same amount of parking at the same time. They've changed that, and instead of doing a shared parking agreement, there is now reserved parking for both Unit 12 and Unit 6. And with this has added 4.13 acres. So instead of 1.97 acres, it would be 4.13 acres, again, at the 189 units that they've reduced, and this would be 46 units per acre. Now, in looking at the zoning ordinance and in looking at calculations for density, it says that you should, if it's a mixed use, you need to look at the entire development. And as I've stated before, the entire net acreage of the development is around 49.7 acres, 47.9 acres. Using that with the number of units that are already there and adding 189 units, you get 763 units. For the entire development of High Street, this is an increase from 12 units per acre to 16 units per acre. And this is, again, a change from when you first saw this. In regards to proffer conditions, the applicant is voluntarily proffering the 3 conditions that you see here. The property shall be developed in 1 or more phases, generally in accordance with the novel plan that you have before you. They're also proffering to promote affordable housing, $7,775 per dwelling unit. And then prior to issuance of a building permit for construction, there will be a construction management plan submitted to and approved by the High Street Condominium Association. Within the zoning text amendment, there is a requirement that in order to build multifamily housing, then they would have to get a special use permit. And looking at a special use permit, of course, we've known this before, there are 6 criteria that you have to consider when looking at a special use permit. So just to give a quick overview of what they're asking, this is, again, is Unit 6 is 1.27 acres. It'll only be residential and have 10,633 square feet of interior amenities, and there will also be an outdoor pool. Again, that's Unit 6, the larger of the properties. Unit 12, closer to Movie Tavern, would have 5,000 square feet of commercial and 2,233 of indoor amenities. This here is a rendering of Unit 12, and the arrow shows you the commercial portion of the building that would face the Movie Tavern. And here is a depiction of Unit 6. They have gone before the ARB for conceptual review. These renderings reflect the changes that the ARB requested of them. However, they have not gone back before the ARB to get approval for the renderings. This now looks at the parking again. We now have designated parking spaces. The required number of parking spaces based on the size of the building and also the breakdown of the one-bedroom and two-bedroom apartments, and also included visitor parking, is 323 parking spaces. They are providing 326 parking spaces. So instead of a deficit, they are now over, they're providing 3 more spaces than required by the zoning ordinance. And here it shows you where those parking spaces would be located. Trip generation, this just shows that based on modeling, residential uses will actually result in a 61% less traffic count in the AM peak hours, and then 73% less traffic in the PM peak hours, for a total of 77% less traffic on a daily basis. Staff has reviewed this based on the 6 criteria. First, we always look at the comprehensive plan. We believe that it is compatible and that the plan allows for less residential other than other uses in the ED2, and what that simply means is the ED2 district would allow, it still allows for less than the comp plan. The comp plan simply states the ED2 and the ED2 and the ED district will require less residential than commercial. If this is approved, it still would allow less residential than commercial. However, we believe it's incompatible because the comp plan speaks specifically to High Street and specifically to Quarter Path, both ED2 districts that say that we, the city, want to maintain the ED2 as is. In regards to the density, if you remember at first, again, it was 105 units per acre because we were just considering the 1.97 acres. Now I think it makes more sense, and I think it's actually better planning to actually have the entire density, and is actually what the zoning ordinance would have us to do. So the density is 16 units per acre, and we do believe that it's reasonable. We do feel there's still some compatibility issues. There's a separation in this mixed-use development from residential from commercial, and that's done by Middle Street. And then there's some question about the function of development with the addition of residences in relation to outdoor amenities. There are certain outdoor amenities like the pool and the outside area that are not at one of the buildings, but actually in another building, the building that is closer to the garage. And then there, I don't see anywhere in the plan that there has been any accommodation for pedestrian walking in the area when you will have the other commercial uses that are present. I will state that they have provided the proffer condition. This is not a requirement of the city, but it is a goal in our strategic plan and also a goal in our comprehensive plan, and they are offering a voluntary proffer to go towards housing affordability. Staff concludes that this proposal is not in harmony with the comprehensive plan, and staff recommends denial of PCR 23003, 23003A, and 23004, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We do have the applicant here available also to answer questions if you have any.
You mentioned trip generation in your presentation.
Yes.
Clear to me that what do you compare it to?
It was compared to if commercial uses were actually on the 2 properties.
So my second question is with respect to the parking, is the overall site fully compliant with the city's parking requirements?
At this time, yes, sir, they are.
Proposal as presented?
With the proposal as presented, they do have enough parking based on the zoning ordinance requirements for parking.
I was a little unclear in your statements about, can you go back to the slide you had about your points on the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
You say it's compatible in that the plans allows less residential than other uses. I'm not, what?
Yes, and I apologize.
Yes.
So the ED district and the ED2 district in the comp plan, it simply states that in both of those districts, residential uses have to be less percentage of residential uses have to be within those 2 districts. So the ED2 district and ED2 and ED have to have more commercial than residential. It does not give a percentage that it has to be. The ED district and the ED2 say 40%.
Okay,
They are now would increase to 43%. It's still less than the majority, so they are compatible with the comp plan in that regard. Does that hopefully
Yes.
make it a little clearer?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Tarley?
Yeah, that was a lot of math.
Yes.
I was trying to follow it. But the question, I think, Mr. Hamilton, the next question I wanted to ask was with respect to parking as it is currently zoned. Is there sufficient parking on site?
Yes, sir.
And then the change from 101 per acre to 16 per acre, which is essentially taking in a different amount of acreage that's included in the entire parcel, and you're comfortable that that's a fair calculation?
Yes. So how we got the 101 is that was provided by the applicant.
Right.
After we sat down and talked after the city council meeting, and really prior, when they gave us the designated parking spaces, that then changed. And they provided, I think it's in your packet, kind of a review of other multi-use developments in the city. And in looking at those, all of those looked at the entire development and not just the parcel of where the residential development took place. And so I'm very comfortable with that's the correct way to calculate that.
And with respect, it might be a little helpful, under the current zoning, could they propose a development that looks anything like what they propose now?
Yes, they could. And they could, under the current zoning, no, sorry. If they changed it, they could. Under the current zoning, they cannot. The ED2 district only allows 40%. At current, this development is maxed at 40%. There are no further residential uses that can be put at High Street under the ED2 zoning district. Sorry, I misunderstood your question.
It's fine, I appreciate that, because then under the ED3, it would permit them then to add additional residential.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. Phillips, questions?
Could you elaborate a little bit on nuances or compatibility, function of development with the addition of residences in relation to outdoor amenity? What is it
Yes.
that you're really concerned about there?
Just one of the concerns is the larger unit, the larger building closest to the garage has a pool. That pool amenity is open to both buildings, however, it's only at one. There are other amenities that are in the first building on Unit 6 in front of the movie tavern that's not available or offered at the second building. So you would have residents walking back and forth from those places. And from what it appears, there's no really residential pedestrian walkways. And so you have businesses that are there, you have traffic that will be there that's not really present on the other side of Middle Street where there's just residential areas and where those amenities are within their specific multifamily developments.
Okay, thank you for your clarification.
My only question, or my question to you is, when ED2 was first developed, was that for a specific development? Because this feels like a request to create a new zone for a specific development. And do we have history where ED2 was created for a specific development?
I would have to yield that question to someone that was here earlier, and I apologize, I don't know the answer to that.
So I'm having to go back to my memory banks. ED2 applies to Quarter Path and High Street. And of those two developments, I believe High Street came first. John may be able to refresh my recollection because you were around there too. And Quarter Path then came later and was zoned ED2, so I think it was High Street.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
I have a question on the parking.
Yes, sir.
My understanding is that it's reserved parking, but I'd like for you or perhaps the applicant to explain what reserved parking equates to. Does it mean that spaces are all going to have a number that corresponds to each apartment? Does it mean that there's going to be a sticker, and if a resident parks in a non-residential spot, that's a problem? Or if a non-resident parks in a residential spot, if that's a problem?
I think that is a question, that clarity or specific that you're discussing would be a question for the for the applicant. What we know is that these are designated spaces that only residents would park. The enforcement of that has not been discussed, and I think that's a question for the applicant.
Thank you.
Ms. Griffin, you mentioned the units per acre, that
Yes.
the highest currently in Williamsburg is
14 units per acre.
14, and this would be,
16.
so this would be the highest in Williamsburg, and that's reasonable?
Well, it's by
What's the basis-
special,
What's the basis for saying that it's reasonable? I guess the staff, what's staff's thinking in saying that the highest density in Williamsburg would be reasonable?
by right, the highest density is 14 units per acre. There are several zoning districts where a special use permit can be requested to go higher than 14 units per acre. So in that instance, staff felt that it was reasonable because there are opportunities already for higher density other than 14 by a special use permit. And this is the same thing.
But only with city council approval.
That's correct. City
Let me ask you
council
about the
approval.
proffers. There was, the construction management plan has to be
Yes.
approved by the condo association. Who controls the condo association?
From my understanding, it is Lamar and others in the development that own.
Well, I think when we were talking about the parking, the enforcement of the parking, which touches a little bit on Mr. Granger's question, his is a little more granular, but there is no reserve parking now. They say in the application and your comments that there's going to be, but they're going to have to change the condo documents, the rules of the condo association to effectuate that.
I'm
Is
not
that right?
certain that they would have to change the rules. I would ask our city attorney to speak to that, but I'm not sure that they would have to change the rules in order to do that.
So we looked at the HOA documents. The HOA documents do provide currently for shared parking. The majority of the owners of the condo units can change the current HOA covenants as I read those documents, and currently the owners of the majority are the High Street LLC owners. And they continue to own the majority of the condominium units out there. And so as long as they constitute a majority of the ownership interest, it appears to me that they have the ability to do that. I will say I have not reviewed any of the leases. I just looked at the HOA documents that are available on the court information system.
Thank you for that. So if they have the controlling vote, enough votes to control that aspect, they can also control the approval of the construction management plan, right? So what's the purpose of having that as a proffer? Is it, I mean, if they're in control, if the applicant's essentially, or the property owner's in control of it, is it a meaningful proffer in your?
I think it was a meaningful proffer. I think they were trying to show good faith effort that there would be some, outside of the city, there would be some kind of foresight on how the construction moved forward.
But they're in control of it,
Yes,
based on Ms. Shelton's reading of the documents. Okay,
yes.
that's good. Thank you. Any other questions from Ms. Griffin? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing, the public forum. Mr. Zhang, I believe, is representing the applicant. While he's getting settled, I will tell Ms. Griffin I love that PowerPoint background.
Thank you.
That's a very nice one. You feel free to use it anytime.
See, just want to make sure we're. Like guess the pointer doesn't work. All right. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Benny Zhang. I'm with the Williamsburg office of Kaufman and Knowles, and it's my pleasure to be here today. Figured it'd be helpful to reintroduce you to the team here. I'm joined here today by Brandon Wright, who is a representative with Crescent Communities, our client and the developer. Ryan Stevenson with AES Consulting Engineers is also present. We did have a traffic engineer conduct a traffic study, DRW Consultants LLC, and I'm joined here today by my venerable colleague, Mr. Greg Davis at Kaufman Knowles, and we serve as Zoning and Land Use Counsel for Crescent. Crescent is a national developer that has exposure to over 16 markets and have done up to this time 69 multifamily developments across the United States. Brandon Wright is familiar with the Williamsburg market, having developed a multifamily development in James City County years prior. And one thing that distinguishes Crescent from other developers is that they are a co-owner and investor in the projects that they develop, so that ensures accountability and also quality control. Crescent will partner with local high schools, in this case it'll be Lafayette, for high schoolers interested in the realm of real estate career. Wanted to put this rendering, and Ms. Griffin has done a good job orienting us with this project. You see units 12 and 6, and one thing that might strike you if you use your common sense is that the project, our proposed project, fits well and integrated well within the existing High Street development. You see towards the back are the High Street View apartments on the left-hand side, and on the top right-hand corner, you'll notice the Sterling Manor apartments. Wanted to mention as well, compatibility flows throughout this project as we proposed into the High Street development. Our architect, Mike Poole, also designed the High Street View apartments towards the back over there on Unit 6. Ms. Griffin has done a thorough presentation, and we wanted to reiterate several key points on the updated submission. One, we did lower the density to 189 units. We've dropped the parking requests based on a recalculation of the movie theater, which we overcounted the seats, and that is technical, but that's based on how the city's parking requirements is calculated. And we found a surplus of 3 extra spaces. Now, we've also looked into 2 other national standards, the Urban Land Institute and also the Institute for Traffic Engineers. And in both instances, we found that the city's parking standards are much higher than what the 2 national standards would call for. In other words, we have ample parking. We'll go a little bit into this later, but we have updated the density, and you'll see a drastic decrease from 101 dwelling units per net acre to 16 dwelling units per net acre, and we concur with staff's position that this is fair and reasonable. And lastly, it's important to note that we've retained our 5,000 square feet of retail. This was a feedback given by staff, and more importantly to note, this is meaningful commercial space. If you look to Plaza Azteca or the Layaka space, they are right around the 5,000 square feet. So a meaningful ancillary commercial use will go into that space. When we sat here at the December 23rd meeting and we saw the large 105 large-size font figure out there, you could have seen our reactions in our seats. We were probably squirming. And the reason why is because it didn't comport with the 5-story garden-style multifamily development that we were proposing. So we asked our consultants, AES, to conduct an analysis of the existing multifamily developments in the city, and we did it from an apples-to-apples comparison. Now, Ms. Griffin had put in her staff report and in her presentation that it should be 46, which discounts the BMP. In this instance, we've factored in the BMP, and if you judge it and compare it with some of the other existing multifamily around town, we were right there within the average. In other words, this is no different than what you would expect in other existing city inventory for multifamily. Ms. Griffin also did a great job touching on the underlying reasons for ED3. I wanted to touch about this a little bit more in granular detail. We did take largely the ED2 ordinance and proposed an ED3 after, or in the attempts of addressing staff's concern. We want to iterate a few highlights with it. It is the ED2 ordinance that we've taken to propose this now ED3. The list of the uses you will see in our submission is the exact same as you will find in the ED2. And what that enabled us, but for two changes: one, to increase the density requests that we are proposing here today, and second, it enabled us to provide a meaningful cash proffer. My clients are committed to finding a meaningful way to contribute and help address the city's affordable housing issue, and this was one way to trigger that rezoning. In other words, the use is consistent with what the comprehensive plan calls for. I'll wrap this up fairly quickly, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to highlight 2 points leading to the last slide on the comprehensive plan, if I may. But real quickly, we are offering up to $1.5 million in a meaningful voluntary cash proffer. This will equip the city with the tools to address the affordable housing crisis that we see nationally in an innovative and proactive way. This is my last slide, Mr. Chair, and wanted to hit on some of the key highlights that we think is appropriate and hopefully earn the Planning Commission's support for our proposal to the City Council. One, as you've seen, the ED3 enables us, largely taking the context of the ED2 ordinance, to allow us to do cash proffers that becomes a catalyst for a top city priority. We've done a fiscal impact study. It does provide for net positive fiscal impact of $7 million to the tax base, which in of itself fulfills a key city initiative for the ED ordinance. It's an appropriate mix of uses. Modern urban planning calls for a mix of residential components with commercial, and as Ms. Griffin said over and over throughout her presentation, this is mixed use, which is consistent with the comp plan. We also wanted to highlight that this has garnered support from a majority of existing retailers, which includes the anchor tenant Movie Tavern. We have Tipsy Bean, Revolution Golf and Grill, Plaza Azteca, and Aticha. And with that, the idea is that with the increased footprint to surround and patron the existing retail within the high street, it also could spur greater investment and also, frankly, more services to the surrounding businesses along the Richmond Road corridor. We know that that is probably the most dense commercial corridor that we see in the city, and this has that ability with our proposal to further along with fulfilling the commercial and economic base with it. And I'll leave you with this, Mr. Chair, with 2 examples, or actually 3 examples that we've seen in the city where local governments, including their planning commissions, have flexed a bit from the comprehensive plan when facing economic realities. We've seen from the Flats of Williamsburg, where at that time it was a commercially zoned B2 zoning district that then, through conversations and through the applications by the applicant, had triggered a rezoning and adopted by the leadership of the City Planning Commission, City Council, to rezone it to PDH zoning district, which took it from commercial to residential. Other examples include the Willow Creek Apartments, which took away another commercial property, may have not been called for at the comp plan at the time, into meaningful residential components. And finally, in York County, we've seen with the George Washington Inn was redeveloped from commercial into residential, in all three instances to fulfill another key city initiative, which was to provide workforce housing. In that similar vein, we would respectfully ask the city to support and provide a favorable recommendation of Crescent Communities to the City Council. I realize I didn't address the 2 questions, but if you'd like me to do that, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, would you like to hear the questions again?
Absolutely.
Or do you have them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. On the first, I wanted to bring up in terms of the pedestrian, we'd be happy if it's the will of the Planning Commission to allow us to proffer additional pedestrian amenities or whatever to help provide with the flow of the residential to commercial component. We just wanted to add with that is it's true that only one of the buildings will have a swimming pool and other amenities, but it's accessible for all residents. They certainly will just walk over and across the plaza to that Unit 6, use a key fob. It's governed by controlled access. It will be a secured site, and it's available to all residents there. But we are happy to proffer, if it's the will of this body, additional, voluntarily proffer additional pedestrian assets to allay any concerns from staff on that. On the designated parking, my client will stripe all designated residential parking spaces for its residents. It will install clear signage and parking instructions to ensure that it's clear for all the residents there. Residents will not have assigned parking, but they will have parking decals that they'll put in their cars. And we'll have 5 to 6 on-site staff that will be there available to field any questions, concerns, or issues, whether it's by the existing residents there or the retailers that may have complaints about parking with that. But as of right now, I think at the end of the day, with the overall scheme of it all, Crescent will work with the existing retailers and with the HOA to adopt a parking management plan to ensure enforceability and that these designated spaces will be maintained.
Okay. Were there follow-up questions, Mr. Phillips, on the pedestrians, Mr. Granger, on the enforcement?
No.
Okay. Any other questions?
I actually
Yes.
I do
Go ahead.
have a question. So with regard to residents parking, I understand about the reserved parking for residents, but should residents park in the freely available space for the commercial businesses, what is the remedy, the immediate remedy for, say, the owner of Plaza Azteca who can't get people who have reservations in because there are residents parked in the parking spaces that are closest to his restaurant?
Oh, that's a great question. Mr. Chair and Commissioner Liebel, thank you for that question. No, residents will not be able to park in, I don't have the pointer here. Oh, there it is. Never mind. There you go. In those central spaces. And really, the aspect of, the whole underlying aspect of having Crescent there is to be able to mix well between the retail and the residential component. As I mentioned, we will have on-site staff that will be present on-site to provide and field any concerns or issues there. And, we'll work with the HOA on any of the identifiable parking issues. An immediate remedy, obviously, and this will be a last stop effort, obviously, but towing is certainly an option, but that's far more preferable at first to working a solution out with the HOA and with the retailers before it has to get to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zhang.
Thank you.
So this is a public forum. I don't have any speaker cards for these applications, but this is the time if anyone, yes ma'am. Yes, sir. We'll get you in order. Oh, you have your speaker card with you. That's why I don't have it.
Laurie Wheel, 412 Harriet Tubman Drive. So I have a list of 13 issues to consider for high-density development and this one. I'm not going to address all 13, you'll be glad to know. But I will mention 2. There are hundreds of already approved high-density units in the city, and we do not yet know the impact on our infrastructure, including schools, traffic, water supply, treatment, city services, etc. I personally feel that's a valid concern. Number 9 is, will accepting cash for affordable housing initiatives undermine our comp plan? It is unclear how a zoning exemption based on an affordable housing component has been interpreted as proffering cash by multiple developers. Let's see. So to that point, just talking about these cash proffers, I wanted to read something, if I may, from the site Ongoing Land Development Project Application, which is on the city site, which you all know, I'm sure. And number 4, under proffers, community impacts. The per-unit contribution shall be designated to fund the city's affordable housing initiatives, which expenditures include but are not limited to land acquisition and associated costs, professional consulting, studies and plans, construction costs, and related programming costs. Just want to call your attention to the wording include but are not limited to, and related programming costs. I don't know, I'm old-fashioned. I see large amounts of cash, $1 million or more here, and kind of words like include but are not limited, related programming costs. I don't know. To me, I can't help but wonder if we aren't opening a Pandora's box related to these gigantic cash proffers, and my concern about the comprehensive plan, to the first reading from my list. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Yes, sir, I saw your hand next. Oh, you're next. Just be sure to state your name for the clerk and your address, please.
My name is Vittorio Minichiello, and good evening, everybody, the City Planning Commission, and all. Everybody in this room is a very nice person here, and I respect a lot, and I know for many years. The law firm, the Crescent Group, and all of you. I have nothing but respect for the work you guys do. I made one of the big investments I've ever made in my life, and I made in the city of Williamsburg, okay? And I bought the first front building and the side building attached to the learning center. And the declaration, first of all, that the HOA, when I bought it, it can only park assign, they cannot assign parking without to change the HOA. And the only thing it can assign, it was 30 parking spaces at the movie theater. You guys got the copy of the HOA, okay? And it was commercial. And I borrowed the money from the bank in that principle, because I believe in the city of Williamsburg and what needs to be done. And now change the horse on the Middle River, because now we want this beautiful project. It's beautiful, but it's in the wrong place. Maybe they can do the other side, they can assess parking to the garage. If you put these people right in the middle, you change the zoning, how am I going to pay the bills? You know, like my profit's going to go down. The bank, I need to pay them. I make mortgage every month, okay? I think that all this study is wrong. Can the less traffic? Why is less traffic? I don't understand that. Why? And why so benefit to so many other people? Yes, some restaurants and some other business there, they would love the idea to get all these people, because they don't invest $1. They only invest the money inside the business. I invest in the property. And I got 20-year mortgage. Change the law on me, it's not correct. Change the zoning. I'm sorry, I'm not perfect, but you understand what I'm trying to say, okay? You put all this parking space there, assigned parking space, is gonna be a mess. Because now, they're gonna have a towing truck. I have a South by Victor inside the Middletown Road, okay? And they design all the park in the back, and the residential and the commercial in the front. If the towing truck come in and they pick up my cook's cars, they pick up other people's cars, we need to go to Newport News to pick up the car for $175. I don't think the city can do this, rezone. It is what it is. That's what it is, and that's what it should be. Because I made investment in that paper and I signed with the appraiser, with the bank, with everything about the money. I changed the thing now, I don't think it's correct. And that's my point. Because I invest a lot of money. They want to do it, that's fine with me. Buy my property back. They got all these millions to go left or right. I will sell my property for the same amount of money can they pay. And they can do whatever they want. And I'm out of here, and I have to come back here and bother you guys again with my English and even so good. Thank you so much. Just we need to make the right decision, that's all.
Thanks, sir, and you are not bothering us. Okay, would anyone else like to address the commission on these applications? Not seeing anybody coming forward or any hands, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on that and ask for commissioners' ideas. Mr. Phillips, since you were not, I think you were not on the commission when we heard the prior version of this
I
application.
mean, I sat here and did listen, but I was not part of the commission at that time.
So,
yeah, so I have listened and heard many things for and in opposition to the rezoning. I've noted things that I would expect from the retailers in the area. Also noted that this is zoned for economic development. I know that there were some particular categories and guidelines that were, not guidelines, but elements that were put into that economic development definition. But a lot of times I think that time passes and things change. So that's something that we have to weigh. I've also noted that a process has taken place to evaluate and deal with parking concerns. I feel like that process was engaged in very good faith. I read very closely the analyses that were offered and the concerns that were offered as well. Thank you for the comments around the residential and commercial nuances. I personally think that those are important and can be dealt with. And then lastly, I think that mixed use is it's an important element of how not everyone, but some elements of our society want to live. I think mixed use is important. Stop there.
Mr. Hamilton, comments?
So I'd like to recognize that it looks like we've been given a well-thought-out proposal. Good effort's been made to address many of the issues that have come forward. I think it comes down to it's a question of a strategic versus a tactical question. The strategic side of it says we laid out a comprehensive plan, and we started out quite a while ago with High Street and laid out how that would unfold, and a lot of people have invested in High Street, and their plans are based on that original approach. Now we've been offered up an opportunity to maybe shift gears a little bit and bring in something a little different, and I still think there are some risks involved in that. And I think we've got to lean towards the strategic approach rather than a tactical opportunity that arrives. It is good to hear about tactical opportunities because there are times you want to take advantage of them. But I'm not sure this is quite the right tactical opportunity.
So speaking of strategic, I view the comprehensive plan as our strategic plan for the Planning Commission. And our current strategic plan was just adopted in November of 2021. So it's not even 3 years old. We revised this, we're required by statute to revise it at least every 5 years, but we're only a couple of years into this particular strategic plan. As one of the speakers said, we have a lot of high-density housing that is in development but has not come online yet. So we don't know what the impact of that is going to be to our infrastructure, and we don't know what the impact is going to be to housing availability within the community. The one thing that I was using as another guidepost for myself is the Goals, Initiatives, and Outcomes document that we publish. And there is a section under 1 Williamsburg where we talk about middle housing. And one of the goals is to consider necessary zoning amendments to enable the appropriate allowance for affordable accessory dwelling units and the possibility of additional low-impact density to create, and here's the key words, entry to middle-level housing. Now, the proffer that Crescent is offering of $1.5 million does not even scratch the surface of that particular issue that we have in our community. It's not earmarked for anything. It could go for studies, and having spent much of my career as a consultant, I could bill you $1.5 million in less than a year to just study things, and that money would be gone. So I don't believe that's really a meaningful proffer to affordable housing. It doesn't create affordable housing in our community, and I just think that we should stick by our strategic plan and our own goals and stick with what we've got and take a kind of go slow approach with bringing more high-density units online.
Thank you, Ms. Liebel. Mr. Tarley?
I appreciate the comments from fellow commissioners along my talking points as well. And I do like the emphasis on that word strategic rather than tactical or opportunistic. I know Ms. Griffin mentioned spot zoning, and certainly, I appreciate and respect the staff's thoughts on that. My concern is that this would be the only ED3. I have no idea whether there would be anywhere else in ED3 that in the city that ED3 would be appropriate. And part of that new zoning category would be, does it further the welfare of the entire city as part of an overall zoning plan? And that goes back to our strategic outlook. Additional housing units. So in the current zoning, there could be no more residential in High Street. So that's one of the purposes of this particular rezoning. And in our last comprehensive plan, as Ms. Liebel pointed out, it discussed housing. And since then, since that plan has been put out, there's many more high-density units that are online already, and many others that are in progress since then. And the goals and the recommendations for that in that comprehensive plan was, amongst other things, develop a strategy to address additional workforce housing, support the city's efforts to provide workforce housing, explore ways to retain or support diverse housing, study and evaluate affordable housing. None of these recommendations are addressed in this particular rezoning application. And I should have started with, I really appreciate the efforts of the developer and council in trying to address the questions and concerns. These are issues really for the owner, the current owner of the property. They bought this property with this zoning already in place. And to say 8 years later, you know what, we gave it a shot, time to convert. I don't think without more analysis and more strategic thinking, how that will benefit the city as a whole. And this is an attractive proposal, and had we had a full development during comprehensive plan and how it mixed in with the current design of High Street, that might be something that we could look at, but it seems to me that there'd be a more deliberate manner than just a rezoning request a couple years into the comprehensive plan, as Ms. Liebel pointed out. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Tarley. Mr. Granger, did you have comments?
I do not.
You were not going to? Okay. That's what I thought. One of the troubles, one of the problems that I have with going last is that all of these really wicked smart people around me always say cover everything that I was going to talk about. But one of the key things about the comprehensive plan is that it is more than just a set of sort of wishful thinking. It establishes predictability. And it's not only for you as a property owner to know how your property is going to be treated, but it's about your neighbor's property and the property down the street. We've had not only Victor was talking about the investment that he's made based on his understanding of what the zoning is. We have other there's mention of other apartment units that are being built that have not yet been completed or have been recently completed. Those people that put millions of dollars into those projects were also relying on the fact that this particular parcel had a zoning that was established by the comprehensive plan. So they were relying on that too. And I think the reliability, people need to be able to rely on the comprehensive plan. And so I'll just leave it at that and ask if there's a motion to recommend denial of PCR 23-003, PCR 23-003A, and PCR 23-004.
So moved.
I second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Abstain.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to PCR 24-013, and Ms. Griffin, you're back up.
Good afternoon once again. The Historic Triangle Recreation Facilities Authority, HTRFA, as authorized by the property owner, the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, is requesting an amendment to Chapter 21, Article 3, Division 13, Section 21-432. The request is to amend the MS District to allow public buildings owned or operated by the HTRFA, and also to amend the description of the MS District, also just stating that it will allow certain public buildings owned or leased by HTRFA. This just gives a description of the district. And here is a map of the zoning in the city. This is showing a portion of the city. The blue area here is MS, or museum support. Staff does recommend approval of this application. One, it's compatible with the comprehensive plan. Chapter 9, institutions of the comprehensive plan speak to the coming on board of a sports facility and other venues such as that. And also in our goals, initiatives, and outcomes, it also speaks to the building and construction of a sports facility. At present, the MS District does not allow public buildings outside of city buildings, and so this amendment would simply allow the HTRFA to move forward to build the sports facility. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions? Thank you, Ms. Griffin, for that. Questions for Ms. Griffin?
What kind of entity is the HTRSA? Is it a private entity or a government entity? Or?
It is a quasi-government entity. It was established, and I'll go back in my notes here. It was created by resolution in November of 2021 by the governing bodies of the City of Williamsburg, James City County, and York County. It consists of 6 members, 2 from each jurisdiction. The HTRFA was formed to oversee the construction and management of regional recreational facilities as part of the redevelopment of the 160-plus acres alongside the Colonial Williamsburg Visitor Center. The authority is tasked with leasing the property, procuring the construction and financing for the property, and also managing the operations of the facility once it has been constructed.
Who will own the buildings when they're completed?
The HTRFA.
I have a question about your map that shows the museum districts.
Yes.
I found another map online, and unless the number of properties that are zoned MS has markedly changed since this was produced.
No, ma'am, this is just a portion.
Oh, that's just a portion. Okay,
This is just a portion.
Okay.
And I showed this portion only because this is the visitor center property.
Gotcha.
But you're correct. Along South England Street, there are also other properties that are zoned museum support.
Okay, thank you.
Can I get a clarification? I think my colleague, Mr. Hamilton, asked who was going to own the buildings after they were built.
Yes.
And I think you indicated it was the HCRFA, but they will not own the land?
They are leasing the land, the property, from Colonial Williamsburg Foundation.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
That's correct.
Right, other questions? Griffin? Hamilton, Mr. Phillips, you're looking studious? No? Okay. All right, thank you. Is there a comments from the HCRFA, or is that just a staff? Were they expecting to comment?
I don't believe the chairman was expected to comment, but he is here if you have questions of him.
I saw him lurking around in the back row. Okay. Are there any questions at all? Okay.
I do.
So I'm going to open the public forum then, or the open forum, and ask Mr. Trivett to come up to be able to answer these questions. So we have it as part of the forum.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission.
What does adding this verbiage enable HTRFA to do that it can't do now?
It really is just a question of ownership. If the city were to own the buildings, then we wouldn't need the zoning change at all, because that's already allowed. So all this really does is allow the HTRFA to own the building.
That was my question. That was your question?
Yeah, I think we tried to make the change as simple as possible, to just do what we needed done. What this does, it allows us to build the sports center. It also allows us to build the other options that have been talked about, particularly related to like the live performance venue, which the council has asked the HTRFA to study the feasibility of. No decisions have been made on that, but this would allow that to happen as well, in the same kind of fashion.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Okay, I have two speaker cards. Mr. Kraftful, John Kraftful. I'm trying to read the handwriting.
It's John Kraftful. I'm a resident of the city, live at 106 Robert Cole Court. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today because I'm here to speak in favor of this zoning change. Several years ago, when I first heard about the proposed sportsplex, I thought it was a silly idea. The more I have come to understand about it by going to meetings and by listening to people talk about it and by reviewing materials and that sort of thing, I've come to realize that I think this is a very thoughtful idea. And it seems to me that we are, in fact, a tourist area. And tourism keeps our taxes low. So the way I view it, adding this sportsplex, and I hope a performance venue as well, will enhance our ability, increase our ability to keep our taxes relatively low. So rather than draining anything from us, I believe it will actually be contributing to us. It seems to me that the plan is very well thought out, and it seems to me that it allows the three communities, Williamsburg, James City County, Williamsburg, and York County, to work together, which is something I think it's a valuable thing for all of us to see. So I speak strongly in favor of this proposal. I congratulate the City Council on putting this together, and I hope that you will act positively on this. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Hudgens.
Fraser Hudgens, 5 Canterbury. You all have received my email, correct? And did everyone have an opportunity to read it? My concerns are procedural, predominantly in nature. And I raised the biggest issue, I think, is whether or not the HTRFA has standing to bring this particular request for rezoning. I do not believe it does. I set those reasons out in my email to you, and 21-61 talks about how these proceedings are to be initiated. It's quite clear, by petition of the owner. The HTRFA is not the owner. By a contract purchaser with the owner's written consent. Again, we're not there. Or the owner's agent. And there's no indication of any agency relationship. Once you get there, you get into this next layer of, if HTRFA is here arguing, let's assume arguendo, that there is some agency relationship between Colonial Williamsburg, the owner, and HTRFA, where they purport to come in here and get this property rezoned, then we're looking at a situation where this is a legal proceeding. You just asked Mr. Trivett a question, which in my view required him to give a legal response, which he just did. And that's what we have to be careful of. I'm not here to say don't rezone the property, but I'm here to say let's rezone the property in a procedurally safe way and an appropriate way. 21-61 does not allow for this petition to even be before this tribunal today. And then we have the unauthorized practice of law concerns, which I've set out in my email and I understand have been made part of the record, and I won't belabor those. My next concern focuses on the comprehensive plan. And if you look at Chapter 9 of the comprehensive plan entitled Institutions, and this is not in my email, on page 11, it's quite clear to me that the comprehensive plan envisioned that when this sports complex came forward, that there would be an amendment to the comprehensive plan and to the zoning laws. And here's what it says. Colonial Williamsburg is investigating the redevelopment of the Visitor Center into a mixed-use development which has the potential to contain sports facilities, arts facilities, et cetera, et cetera. Such a formal request to change the comprehensive plan designation and potential zoning would be supported upon submission to and approval by the city of an acceptable master plan. And that is what HDRFA attempted to do in the first round, and then that got pulled out. And I would submit to you that's probably the proper way to do this, rather than rezone all of the MS. We're only looking at the visitor center parcel, and I think what we should do is narrowly confine this rezoning request to what was envisioned in the comprehensive plan and what is legally proper. If we also look at page 13 of institutions, page 913, it says recommendations. Work with the foundation to support a change to the comprehensive plan designation and potential rezoning of the property for the visitor center upon submission to and approval by the city of an acceptable master plan. Again, everything in the comprehensive plan that was done pointed to the fact that when this sports complex was going to be forthcoming, that the comprehensive plan would be amended and the rezoning would be done. And so for those reasons, I think it's inappropriate at this time for this tribunal to even consider this application, because it's not appropriately before the court, before this tribunal, because it's an ultra-virus act of HDRFA even to be here. And that is the crux of it. I'm not trying to say let's not rezone the property to allow for the sports complex. That horse is gone, I think. But we need to make sure it's done properly. And it needs to start here properly before it gets to city council, and then we determine it's being done improperly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hudgens. I don't have any more speaker cards, but we have opportunity. Mr. Maslin, I saw Mr. Maslin first, but it's because of his bright gold shirt.
Thanks. Ted Maslin, 196 Lewis Robert Lane in the city. Chair may want to follow up with a question, who owns the buildings based on the terms of the land lease, and how long this authority will own the buildings, and would they revert to the landowner at a certain point? Second thing is, this approach to zoning for this project seems a little haphazard. Traditionally, if somebody is negotiating a land lease, they would make that lease contingent on the rezoning, and as soon as that lease is signed, the applicant would then be applying for that rezoning. I'm not sure why we've waited, up to 2 years to do this at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maslin. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Susan Balashinas at 430 South Henry. This process is new to me, so I appreciate y'all giving us the time and your patience with me. I was confused on the wording of this request. It seemed it was going to blanket whatever was wanting to be approved on this land without coming in front of any group for approval. Is that what this is saying?
It's not really a Q&A period. This is an opportunity for you to tell us what you think, and if you have
I wouldn't want
questions and
anyone to
concerns.
have blanket opportunity to say, I can put any property out there with any use and that be acceptable, whether it's an individual or a group. So that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Dr. Cranbuell, I saw you wave your hand. You were just being friendly. Just chewing him on. Okay, good. Any other comments from anyone? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public forum and ask for comments from the commissioners. Not required.
So we've presented some issues here that I don't fully understand what's going on. Somebody smarter than me can explain it a little bit better.
Well, if you have specific questions, I'm sure Ms. Griffin can.
Well, we We heard in the public forum there was a suggestion we're not following a proper process here.
So the city code does not specify that the attorney for the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation has to be before the Planning Commission. This is not a legal proceeding, this is a legislative proceeding. The HDRFA has been authorized by the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation to bring this before the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Of course. So we received a authorization form,
That's correct.
and that is sufficient.
Yes.
Other questions or comments before we?
My only comment is, on one hand, we talk about the comprehensive plan being our strategic plan, and Chapter 9 does specifically say, at the end on the recommendations, support a change to the comprehensive plan designation and potential rezoning of the property for the visitor center upon submission to and approval by the city of an acceptable master plan. So if we stand by the comprehensive plan, it's not, kind of like Mr. Hamilton, I'm a little confused. This text amendment change doesn't necessarily require that there be a comprehensive plan amendment to fully develop the property. It seems to me that the text amendment allows the HDRFA to own property in the areas currently zoned MS. And it seems a little confusing and not congruous to me, but I get it.
I think this is a great opportunity for this commission to say, we're excited about this project. It has been a long time coming. It has been worked on by hundreds of people for many years. I think our neighbors are partnering with Williamsburg to help grow this community, not just Williamsburg, but Williamsburg and James City and York County, and the wisdom that has been shown in putting this together. I think it's now time for us to act and say, yes, we're behind this. I'm confident that the legal staff at the city has done their research, and they wouldn't have something come before us that's not really ready to come before us legally. I have great confidence in them. This is a project that is long overdue, and I don't think we should stand in the way of it any longer. So that's where I am.
I'm going to say a couple of things that might delay our vote by just a minute, but I just want to address the comprehensive plan. Were you?
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
You complain about going last, so you go next to the last.
I'm just going to make a point about the comp plan that we, at the time, Mr. Granger and I were working morning, noon, and night on that, the last revision of the comp plan. We knew that this was in the works, but we didn't know exactly how it was going to be implemented. And so we were thinking that it might require a change to the comp plan at that time, and so we wanted to put that in, that we were contemplating that big picture, right, that might be the case. But since that time, staff has come up with this much more narrowly focused text amendment that does not require a change to the comp plan. So the fact that we were thinking about it just meant big picture, maybe we need to take that giant step and amend this comp plan later at some point in the future. But it turns out, as staff has said now, we really don't need to in order to implement this. And I apologize. I just wanted to get that clarification about the comp plan.
You said what I was going to say, Mr. Chair.
Shoot,
so
I'm sorry.
I don't have anything to add.
Oh, that was it? Okay. Okay, very good. So are we ready for a motion then to recommend approval of PCR 24-013?
I will happily move that we approve PCR number 24-013.
Second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to our open forum, which is an opportunity for anyone to speak to us about things that are not otherwise on the agenda, or about the site plan for the police station, which is our next item. We don't have a public forum as part of that since it's a site plan subdivision approval. Would anyone like to speak to us about that or anything else that Planning Commission might be involved with? I see Dr. Cranbuell coming.
David Cranbuell at 201 Harrison. I just wanted to commend you for very careful thought on these last two issues. And it's good to see that we put a lot of time into the comprehensive plan, and I appreciate the role that it's played in each of your comments, and I appreciated the separation of strategic versus tactical. That was very helpful, and so I just want to comment on that. And the police station's coming up, and my neighborhood's been very worried about it. Not the police station. I just want to say that. The neighborhood's 100% behind the police station. The neighborhood was very, and remains concerned about all the beautiful trees that have been here for 50-plus years, and the land shape, which is quite gorgeous, that is needed to create the police station. So I just want to make that clear. That, and I also want to thank the city manager, Andrew, for putting the current head of the neighborhood and myself, who was for many years, the past head of the neighborhood, to be put on the landscaping committee. And so that's a work in progress. We had one meeting, and we're going to try to save it. I don't know if it'll work, but some of the 50-year-old trees to buffer our view, or hopefully block our view of the water tower, because that's, and Greg made some comments, well, maybe there'll be more trees in one space. And then my only final comment as we go forward, I mean, I think you as the Planning Commission have become extremely important, which is why I'm glad I started with that compliment. You've really been the key at this point as we are going off in all kinds of wonderful directions, but complex directions. And I'll just point out one thing. I maybe we're going to want to meet with you, James, at some point about the Planning Commission and make them even play a bigger role. But as one example, though, the site committee, citizens aren't asked to speak there. There's no open forum, no nothing. And that's just a kind of an example of where I very much focus on citizen participation, and believe greatly that the more people who get involved, the more apt we are to come to the optimum, not necessarily the perfect, but the optimum decision. So I just use that as an example of where I hope there's some tweaking to be done to make you and this whole process even stronger, but that can wait. So thank you for all you're doing.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the open forum, and that brings us to the site plan subdivision SPR 24-004. Ms. Griffin? Getting the workout today.
Yes. Yeah, so the city is submitting a request to pursue the construction of the police station, and this is SPR 24-004. And again, we wanted to use this time to just present this to the Planning Commission. Normally, a site plan would be on consent agenda, but because there have been comments made by citizens, we wanted to make sure that we give everyone an opportunity to be able to speak regarding the police station. The blue area here shows the proposed location of the police station. It would be at the corner of Lafayette Street at its intersection with Virginia Avenue, on the same side of the municipal building, here right before you get to the water tower. This is the site plan. It just shows where the building will be located. It shows parking around the building. It also shows, you probably can't see here, but there is fencing that will be to the rear of the site that will have the police cars to go into that area. The Site Plan Review Committee did meet and discuss this in length with the Timmons Group, and also we had some citizens there at the time. They are meeting all of the landscaping requirements, all of the parking requirements for the B1 district. If you recall, we came to you, I believe, back in 2023 with the rezoning of this property and also a change to the comp plan to make sure that we did adhere to our own rules to build the police station in this particular location. The next slide just gives you an overview of the landscaping that will be provided. Again, landscaping is required in the parking lot. Landscaping is required around the building. We call that perimeter landscaping. And also landscaping will be provided along Lafayette Street. There is a multi-use path that's in our CIP that is going to be some years out, but we decided just to make sure that there's even a more buffer from Lafayette Street that has been added to this plan now. That is a 7-foot area that will buffer from Lafayette Street. Lafayette Street will also be, the width of Lafayette Street will be reduced, and the parking that is now on Lafayette Street that you see used by employees in the municipal building will no longer be available. This is a rendering of the police station. This design has been approved by the Architectural Review Board earlier this year. They did go through 2 conceptual reviews and also a final review by that board. I'm happy to answer any questions, but again, the Site Plan Review Committee did recommend approval and for it to come before the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Other questions from Ms. Griffin? Charlie, any questions? No questions? Okay. Is there a motion to recommend approval of SPR 24-004 as submitted?
Well, I'm going to share some comments and.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then I'll make a motion if that's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I
No,
gave you the opportunity. I apologize for that.
I didn't have questions, I got comments.
Oh, comments. Okay.
So,
okay. Yes, sir.
So I grew up on Harrison Avenue, and my mother still lives on Harrison. So this is close to my home and my heart. And I remember when there were, before the municipal building was there, and there were houses there. And I feel like this is a really good use of that land. It's land that the city's not going to go out and buy and take out of the residential housing stock possibly. And to expand the municipal facility there makes a lot of sense to me. We've already got some synergy going on there. It'll free up some land across the street for future projects that I believe will enhance our neighborhood and our community. And I don't think it's going to create any additional traffic on Virginia or Harrison that isn't already there now with the proximity of the police station. And so with the coal cars and the trains and stuff going down Lafayette, down the train tracks, I really feel like this is a great location for the police station. It's for that reason, I'm happy to move that we approve SPR 24-004 as is written.
Thank you.
I second.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Tarley?
Aye.
Mr. Boswell?
Aye.
Mr. Granger?
Aye.
Ms. Liebel?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That is all we have to vote on today, and we have a hearing scheduled for May 15. Those of you that have been around for about a year will remember the old Yankee Candle. We heard that before, but a year has passed and they haven't gotten going yet, so we have to renew that, I guess, is pretty much what that is. So we have that in May. Anything else that we need to bring up? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.